Hi, I'm Mike,
And I'm Sam.
and this is
Wise Words with Dodo Birds.
A lot of it was kept under wraps, but after the Holocaust, Nazi scientists that were involved with the Americans afterwards, going over there and being like, oh my God, you guys have committed atrocities. You're monsters. Do you want a job?
Yeah. He was a physician and biological warfare expert. That's a good side gig to physician.
I like how that's like his minor in college.
Yeah. Like you couldn't just find a guy who like played pickleball or went bowling, could you?
We had a couple of those, but like first round draft pick, this guy was an absolute Bond villain. I love that I learned that Hitler suffers from chronic flatulence.
Yeah.
Imagine him yelling at you and then just like,
well, and then you can't laugh. You're dead.
They huff the Führer's farts.
What does constant inhalation of the Führer's farts do to the human body?
And that's how they designed the gas chamber.
Hey! Welcome back, Dodo Birds. Me and Mike are chilling. We're here in a new studio tonight, actually. It was actually a handshake deal with some back alley characters. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I got it right.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And so, we're going to see how long this works out. We'll see. It's kind of a new environment,
Yeah, we're going to do this as long as we can before they find us.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, handshake deals, they can be a little flimsy.
But last episode, we said that we were going to improve stuff. What's this? New microphones.
Yeah.
New studio.
New mic.
Same shit content.
Same shit content. So speaking of content, let's just get right in and let them know what we're planning on doing, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little, if you've ever watched our first episode, I think it's called, Is This Thing On? Is the mic on? Something like that. We actually talked about history quite a bit. I forgot, to be completely honest, so I like kind of recently went and listened. And it's just like my own voice talking about fucking World War II, and I heard some me talking about like Vietnam, Japanese, all that shit, the Japanese Empire, all that stuff. And so, we figured we'd visit a historical period once again, that of World War II. And there is a specific reason for this.
Yeah. Over the week, so I've been working nights lately, and I get to listen to podcasts and music while I work. So I'm just consuming so much content. So I decided to go onto Audible and get a good book. This is the first time I've really ever read like a nonfiction history book. I'm usually not into them, but I read the book Operation Paperclip, or listened to it rather, and I can't recommend it enough. It's really, really cool. It's written robustly, very detailed, but written in a way that it's still intriguing. It's not just a list of facts. The author, Annie Jacobson, has a really good way of like tying in the stories and flipping between the characters involved. Just to give the long and short of it, though, it's about World War II Nazi scientists that were involved with the Americans afterwards.
Yeah, and I'll break down a little bit real quick before you go into more details, because he actually knows, especially from having read this book, more details about it than I do. But like for anyone who doesn't know your history, because you probably fell asleep in history class, because 90% of us do, right?
I did.
Right. Basically, at the end of World War II, before the war was even over, I'm going to do a little speed run. Okay?
Yeah.
Before the war was even over, the U.S. and the Soviets already knew that a Cold War, I don't know if they knew it was going to be a Cold War, but they knew some big standoff between the two of them was coming up. And so immediately, basically in all of 1945 in Europe it's not going to be who's going to win this war anymore. It's going to be who gets what. That was actually, I don't know if that was actually said by the guy, but in Band of Brothers, which is a show and a book, I think he might have actually said it. One guy actually said that. He's like, oh yeah, we've won. It's not a question of that anymore. It's a question of who gets what.
Yeah.
And a big part of it was that a lot of important people were dispersing. And it wasn't just about the scientists, which we're going to get into that in a lot more detail, but they were just like, who are we going to get to put on trial? Who are the Soviets going to put on trial? What are we going to do? Who gets Hitler? Because they didn't know,
And the land and
they split
leftover weapons.
They fucking split Germany down the two. If you ever heard of East and West Germany, East and West Berlin, that's when this all went down. And that was all because the Soviets and the Americans were already teeing up for what we all know now in history as the Cold War.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm going to pass it back to Mike because scientists were, some had fled already, correct?
Correct. So I knew that there was, like, I was aware of Operation Paperclip, which is what the actual operation was, and most of it was like declassified until within the past decade.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was kept under wraps. But after the Holocaust, after, in 44 and 45 era, we started going over there and being like, "Oh my God, you guys have committed atrocities. You're monsters. Do you want a job?"
It's like, can you come and help us? We need it.
Yeah, like they were like, "Oh my God, what have you guys been up to? This is crazy. I love it."
Now, let's be clear. We're not talking about like the fucked up experiment. I mean, some of them, but like most of it, let's be honest, was about weapons and rocket technology.
A lot of it was rocket based.
Rocket based.
However, we did work with some medical experts that did some of the fuckery.
Yeah, I can believe that too. Because they learned stuff and they learned what not to do to people.
Yeah, it turns out when you try all gruesome matters of
changing people's fucking eye color and shit.
Yeah.
Like, and seeing what kind and how two different twins react to fucked up experiments.
Yeah, the twin stuff is crazy. Like, we could probably do a whole episode on, the final solution.
Yeah. Oh, and we could delve into it sometime. But that isn't exactly, I mean, there'll be a little bit of that in here because these fuckers did that shit. These were the people who, not all of them. Again, you might know more about who specifically did what from the book, but I mean, they were all bad. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
they were. If they weren't committing an atrocity directly, they were complicit. So we're just gonna be very clear about that.
At the very least, they absolutely knew it was happening, and they still showed up to work, even though maybe they didn't even see some of this stuff.
Right.
Like, even if you're the guy who makes the files in the office of manslaughter, or a murder.
You just keep your eyes on the files.
Yeah. Or just the HR guy at the genocide camp.
Put your headphones in so you don't hear all of the shooting and slaughter.
Yeah, you just turn the classical music up a little bit.
Oh, goodness God.
So, we'll start with, I wasn't really sure to the degree of Americans' involvement with this. I think some of this stuff you'll find kind of interesting or shocking. First off, Creedyn's here with us, by the way.
Yes, Dodos. We are joined by Creedyn tonight. He's been with us before.
Say hello.
Hi, guys.
And he's going to help us navigate a little bit because we have some notes for this episode and we're going to take a little bit of a look. Mike, actually, what I'm looking at right now, really nice outline. It's got some details and it's very well organized. I like it.
So the most prominent figure in Operation Paperclip is Werner von Braun.
Which I will say really quick right off the bat, this dude was already, because Hitler was such a paranoid psychopath, this dude was already on the outs with the Nazis. No one wanted him until they realized, oh, we want this guy.
Well, it was interesting too, is that this guy, you can make a case for him for being kind of a moral dude, kinda,
Really?
He was kind of mentioned as just kind of a nerd. Like, the people that worked with him, they're like, he's a nice guy.
Sure.
There wasn't any fervent Nazi behavior, but he was implicated and involved in some fucked stuff, including the V2 rockets, which killed millions.
Yeah.
like that was his design, But the original deal with the Nazis was that he actually had prototypes for space rockets in the late 30s.
Jesus Christ.
And early 40s. He had prototypes for space rockets.
I think I've heard about that because these guys, they were they would have had, let's say they had ruled the world, right?
Yeah.
They would have had space travel 15 years before the rest of us.
They might have done it in 46.
Right. They'd have landed on the moon in 1950.
Yeah, we would already be in Mars.
Well, hold on now. Let's not give him too much credit.
Is it Nazi Mars colony?
Is it Nazi Mars colony?
That seems like a B movie.
Colony Adolf? A B movie. Just goes straight to streaming.
Yeah. If you're lucky. It's on Tubi.
They're selling it on VHS.
Yeah. But yeah, he got famous off the V2 rockets. But the agreement was that, you're going to keep looking up my rocket program, and then eventually you can work on my space rocket. But the military is like, well, yeah, we'll keep developing your rockets, but we're using them for missiles. And these missiles were used in absolutely terrible ways. They were
for a long time.
Yeah. Yes, for a long time.
Yeah.
From 40 to...
I mean, they're probably... I guess I can't say specifically. This is something I don't know to be... That could be still being used today, right?
I think we've gone past
that? Okay.
Because, like...
At least to the 80s, though.
They were the prototype to the intercontinental.
Right. I was saying, they probably still use them, though. Huh?
A
Smaller
version.
scales.
I'm sure a version of them.
A version. Exactly. Not the one he made.
We use the tech.
I was just about to say, like, that what was done then has been built off of, and to this day is still killing fucking.
Where we are now comes from this guy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's awful.
So they were developed in the Middlework factory, and I want to talk about that a little bit because the Middlework factory was particularly fucked. They made like the prisoners and the slaves dig with their hands this underground factory / bunker because they were getting so much Russian bombs.
Yeah.
So they're like, we need to put one underground that's bomb resistant.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they didn't trust the slaves and the prisoners with mining tools. They made them literally, they would just like blow up a section and be like, now excavate it.
Yeah, now you go in and take care of it. If a guy dies, you step over him, you'll take care of it later.
Yep. There were people dying in the Middlework like construction so often that it was estimated about every 4 minutes they would lose somebody, and they were just getting another 100 in like the next day, or like just keeping production relentlessly going.
So we don't need to get into numbers, but let's just say lots of people died really fast. What did you say the average? Did you just say it?
No, just average every 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Or 4 minutes, I'm sorry. Every 4 minutes somebody was dying.
Yeah.
Like,
still though, like 4 seconds would be crazy, but
yeah,
4 minutes is still not
12
great.
12 people an hour.
Say how many if it was during this podcast, how many would have died just in the last, since we started.
Yeah, and not from like quick deaths, like deaths that they've been like grinding away at for months. Terrible.
Yeah.
Like just worked.
It's not like you showed up and died 4 minutes later.
Nobody shot them. They worked to death. Yeah. Crazy.
It's like you showed up and the guy who showed up 6 months ago, two guys who showed up 6 months ago die within 4 minutes of each other.
Another fucked experiment that they ran on the prisoners of Middlework is that they wanted to cut corners by feeding them less. And so they...
Less than nothing?
Less than hardly nothing.
Yeah.
So they worked with a local scientist, and he'll come up later. Believe it was Otto Ambros that had involvement in this, but he made a cellulose paste. So it was based off of, from the extermination camps, they were getting all these clothes. What do we do with them? They made a paste of like fat and cloth and fed the prisoners.
Ugh.
Cellulose paste. Like, and
no wonder they were fucking dying every 4 minutes.
Yeah, and that did not help. Like, they're like, but anyway, well, back to von Braun. That's where he came from. And then when the Americans finally found Middlework, most of the documents there had been completely destroyed, burned. Like, all the filing cabinets just ripped open, except for on a little piece of tack board on like a bulletin board was like command of contact, like all their, like, who do I call? Who's top in line? If something goes wrong or there's an emergency. Werner von Braun at the top of that list with his phone number and address. And the U.S. paid him a visit very quickly.
Yeah, I bet you they did. We need this guy.
Yeah, they talked to him right away, trying to see what he would, be able to tell us. And he was hesitant to tell much at all at first, just like anybody on this list. At first, we're like, nope, I don't know. What?
Right.
They did what? Like,
and the worst of them, let me rephrase. The ones they knew about that did the worst things didn't always make the cut. They did wind up getting one guy. Well, actually, it was a lot of them made the cut. Because like I remember one guy who like they were like, I don't know, this guy's pretty bad. We at least got to send him back to Germany for a trial. And then the trial was like, he's fine. He didn't go back to the U.S. though.
We'll talk about Kurt Bloma later.
Is that who it was?
And he's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
He's a monster.
They didn't know until later, right?
No, they knew right away. They were like, you're doing
did they
crazy
just lie
shit.
then? They were just like, oh, hey, now everyone else, like it was one of those things like now everyone else knows, so we got to do like make it look like we're doing something about it.
What? He did what? And like, but they got like, Bloma was a biological and chemical weapons warfare expert.
Yeah.
And Bloma and von Braun would have had to have worked together because they found in the Middlework district or the Middlework factory, these warheads were never used, but they found V2 rockets pumped with tons of tarbin and sarin gas, which one drop of tarbin gas would kill a man in like 6 minutes.
Yeah. No, that shit's not something to joke
with.
with.
And even just like trace residues of it can destroy your lungs and kidney function and like.
Right. Okay. And so that actually brings a question to mind because one thing I understood at least, and maybe I just got some bad info. I don't know. I thought it was good information, but I had heard that Hitler himself, because he fought in World War I and there was a lot of, chemical warfare in World War I, it really fucked people up. And it was my understanding that like, that's a big part of why they weren't really used. Like if you really look at the battles in the history, chemical weapons weren't used in World War II, especially not like in World War I. And especially not by the Germans. Like other sides actually used. It was my understanding that other sides used stuff worse than the Germans because Hitler was kind of like sympathetic to that. But
that was addressed in the book.
Yeah.
Like that, but that's not why they didn't use them. They didn't use them because they weren't ready
yet.
So what Hitler did was smart, I guess, but he just kind of like decompartmentalized all these like different categories.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you take care of this, you do all that fuck stuff, and you take care of this, and don't tell me unless you have to.
Right.
And he just trusted his confidants that they would.
They would let him know if it was something he would object to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so,
psychopath.
Like Bloma, he talked to like Himmler directly. Like, so he was like.
So he talked to the evil mastermind. Like, if there was one person in the Nazi regime, just for you viewers, if there's one person in the Nazi regime who was worse than Adolf Hitler, it was Heinrich Himmler.
Yeah. Himmler and Göring, monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. I know less about Göring. I know that he was up there.
Himmler was the head of the SS, and Göring was the head of the Gestapo.
Oh, okay.
So both the same kind of position, but different factions.
Right.
One had some rules, and the other had none.
Yeah.
At all.
And let's be honest, they didn't really have any rules.
Yeah, they got to make up their own.
Yeah, they made up the rules. That was as they went. Fucking evil.
But anyway, as we
bloody disgusting.
Immediately, America showed interest in getting Wernher von Braun here with a little bit of hiccups along the way. There were a couple stories that leaked about him, and the U.S. went out of their way to be like, nope, he's a good guy. And everybody says so. He didn't have anything to do with that. And later to find out that there were documents of him working on suspect things, and he had direct contact. There is a photo of him in SS uniform that was recovered later. And he said he just wore it once. He only wore it the one time.
Oh, I just wore it for a photo op.
Yeah. Like I had to show up in the get up. But this man, is the reason we went to space. He's the reason we have missiles now. We were 15 to 20 years behind.
Well, and it wouldn't even be so bad if they had forced him to do it.
Yeah.
But this dude was like set up
got
good
paid.
for life.
He got paid a lot of money.
Died
to
a
work.
rich and happy man.
Yeah.
Like that's the part that's like, it's like, what the fuck were you thinking?
Like before the Russian army came in too, there was a point in the book where I forget the general who was in charge of boots on the ground in Germany, like actually investigating these fellas. But there was a guy that was like, we have to get them to the U.S. And they didn't get correspondence back from the president yet. And so he didn't have permission to be doing any of this. He's like, I'm going to round you guys up just in case I get the go ahead.
Okay, look, objectively, that was smart.
The next thing he did, maybe a little less smart. The Russians were coming in 2 days. They had 48 hours to like take everything that they could and leave no trace. So they took 100 tons of V2 rockets and shipped them to the U.S. without permission from our government and any of the allies. We didn't ask. And then we're like, okay, we have the components, but there were all the diagrams and drawings of how these things were made destroyed.
Oh yeah, bro.
So they're like, we don't have there's no way our people are going to be able to cobble this thing together. We don't know about this shit.
We need the guy.
We need the guy. And so we took Von Braun and a slew of other. It started with like 20 or 30, and then by the end of the Operation Paperclip, we had over 1,600 Nazi medical doctors and scientists, people that had at least known.
Like I would have guessed 100.
Yeah.
Before you told me about this stuff. Like I would have guessed 100, 200. Some smart guys, but like no, like monsters.
1,600. Yeah. And like you go further on the list, and one guy's.
This guy was a clerk. He really, truly. I mean, seriously though, like there's, I hate to come back to Band of Brothers again, but the one dude, there's like this village that was near one, and all the guys, this baker and everyone, they're screaming about like in German at him, and the guy understands German. He's a translator, and he literally gets in dude's face. He's like, you mean to tell me you couldn't smell it? Like. If you worked anywhere near one of these things, you know what the fuck's going on. Now, there's the whole like, well, it's I either do this or I join them in the pit, but I don't know. You should still be not set up for life in the U.S.
There were people that wrote letters to other governments and stuff, but not enough. And
I know that Israelis were in fact scooping up any Nazis they could find, regardless of permission from whatever country they were living in or pardoned from. Like,
yeah,
they were getting them good.
I forget which Nazi SS general, went to Israel and was going to go back to face justice, and the Mossad took him like, no, you're not. Like, you're gonna stay right here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they ended up wanting or doing from him, but I'm pretty sure he died. Like, he committed suicide. I'm pretty sure.
There's one story. I wish I could remember the names, but of like some guys from Israel who were like part of a Nazi hunting force. They stalked this dude. And they were like waiting for him. They knew he got off this bus at this one time every day, same bus. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Maybe.
Well, because it was crazy because they were waiting for him. They're like, all right, we're gonna nab him today, right? And then the bus that he usually gets off of, he wasn't on, and they were like, "You're kidding!" Oh. They were like literally waiting. They're like, "You're kidding!" And then
then
guess what? He gets off the next bus, and they did get him.
Oh.
And they did throw him. They had to cycle him because they just had to be 100% sure who he was. So they were like shuffling him around from one hotel room to another with a bag over his head while they figured out his ID for like 4 days. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, I'm glad that they didn't give up and just be like, we didn't get him.
Yeah, they waited a little bit longer, which was great.
I can imagine they were like packing up, like it's over, and they're like, "Wait, is that him?"
Yeah. It was almost like it's like the band can't perform the outdoor show because of rain. It's like, no, we're good.
Yeah,
They said
yeah.
they're doing it. All right, let's go.
Hell yeah! I mean, bad.
When
It's
we're
hard.
catching Nazis, it's good.
It's good. Yeah. I forget in this episode.
Yeah. This one was the kid. I had to bring some light to it real quick.
Yeah,
They
no.
did. Some of these people, like basically the point I was trying to make is some of these people did get caught despite being pardoned by big governments.
Mhm.
Like there were people, especially like Jewish forces out there who were like, nah, some people might let you slide, but no, we're coming for you.
So I think we should go to the second guy here, Arthur Rudolph. Also just kind of involved in the V2 rocket program. Ended up getting a job with NASA later. Helped starting NASA. Those two gentlemen both had a big play in our
They were
space.
like the two, in something I watched a while back, they were like the two big ones. That were like, yeah, basically they shaped the 21st century. They didn't live to see it, but they shaped it.
You want to bring a little bit of light to the scenario? They were trying to give like an award of some sort of excellence for his work in NASA, like way late in his life, and somebody was told to look into it, and they're like, "Nope, you're not getting."
Yeah, no, this guy's a Nazi, and actually, I think there was like a tweet some years ago that was like, this guy, fucking von Braun. This was it was a praising tweet, and then like it just blew up in the comment section. People were like, "Yeah, this dude was a Nazi, right? And not a pretender. He was a real Nazi. Like they didn't let you do the things this guy did unless you were a true believer."
Yeah. So Rudolph was interested, or I mean, he was involved in the Middlework factory as well, because that's where the V2 rockets were made. And what he oversaw was the trading of slaves, like specifically. He was an engineer, but they put him in like a management position so he was the one that negotiated with other businesses and some of the concentration camps to keep getting the labor force in.
That's so fucked, man.
Yeah.
Like the way that they had slavery so modernized. You know what I mean?
They viewed them as animals and they treated them like that.
And that's how slavery's been throughout its thousands of year history. But the modernity of the way the Nazis did it, where they're like working with corporations, and it's like, actually, we can save you quite a bit because of our labor force. It's fucked. It just every time I think about it, it gets me.
Do you want to read Rudolph's additional information section there?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. All right. So Rudolph was a major figure at the Middlework factory, which you mentioned earlier, where he oversaw the use of forced labor from the Dora Mittelbau concentration camp. It's just another one. The conditions were brutal, with high mortality rates due to malnutrition, disease, and executions. Oh, no way. No fucking way. After moving to the U.S., Rudolph's work was critical to the success of the Redstone rocket, which carried the first American astronaut, Alan Shepard, into space. His past caught up with him in the 1980s, leading to the Department of Justice investigation and his voluntary renunciation of U.S. citizenship to avoid prosecution for war crimes.
I believe he went to Argentina.
Okay, I was just going to ask, because I think he was one of the ones who couldn't just like go back to Germany. They weren't going to have him in the 80s. Like,
he was afraid. He's like, I'm not going back. Like, cause
Nazis, like again, America pardoned them harder than anyone in Germany. Like in Germany, you got your
eventually.
Well, yeah, it took time.
The guy that replaced Hitler immediately, very soft.
Yeah.
In fact, many of these like big offenders in the Nuremberg trials, which were the big ones held by the Allies, all these guys that we're going to talk about escaped that entirely.
Yeah.
Never even showed up.
Yeah.
But some of the big guys like Goring was in the Nuremberg trials. I don't remember specifically, but like I know a lot of these people that were directly involved, like the people involved in the Einstein Gruppen,
Huh?
The elite SS that were just gunning people down.
Yeah, yeah.
They killed 2 million people by guns.
Just by guns alone.
They like ran into villages and murdered people.
Wow.
Like that guy might have gotten life, but a lot of like, secondary.
Oh, especially as time went on, because there were so many people to go through. As the denazification, which is something we could actually do an entire episode about that. But as that went on, people were just like, well, Wehrmacht for starters. That's not so bad. This guy, he was stationed here. He actually knew where he was. So we're going to check this guy off. All right, we're going to get to the next one. It got to the point where they were just tired of.
The Nuremberg trials, I think only like a dozen. Do you want to see how many people got executed during Nuremberg? I think it was like 12 or 15.
I think it was a little more than that. But it was 2 digits.
Yeah.
And one woman, by the way, I think one of the first women. Yeah.
But I know
she was bloody evil.
A lot of these people got really, really light sentences that the person that receded Hitler ended up just getting rid of. Like they gave him shortened sentences. People that were supposed to spend 20 years, they got like 7.
Dude, I'm already starting to think about like I think because Himmler was one of the guys who popped cyanide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the because I think he actually did it right during a doctor's checkup. So I could already see the doctor coming in, like, all right, Himmler. No, wait. Oh, fuck. We just wanted to offer you a job.
Okay, so for the Nuremberg trials, out of the 24 that they considered to be part of the Nuremberg, 13 were sentenced to death.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
You said there were only 24 on trial?
The Nuremberg was the top of the top, like the bad of the bad.
Okay, it was only for the officials, top officials.
Yeah.
So they only killed like half of the absolute, like 100% guilty guys.
Right.
They were very light on them. In fact, they were doing, with one of the doctors we talk about later, they were doing a trial, and they brought one of the only survivors who survived his medical experiments. And they're like, can you identify the man who did this to you? And he's like, he's right fucking there. I'll remember this man my entire life. And they're like, so tell us about the thing. And eventually he gets up, pulls a dagger, and runs at dude. And like, the police in the court stop him. And the judge wanted to put him in prison for 90 days. And all the allies and stuff were like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
This man escaped like slavery.
Yeah,
and he had
survived a concentration
pieces
camp.
of his liver cut off. He was involved in the desalination of water experiments where they were just feeding people seawater to see how long that they could survive.
Right.
Like, and making him like ingest chemicals to like take the salt out of the water, but also killing the people.
So the guy didn't do any time for his attempt.
He did like, I think, a week or 2.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Instead of 90 days.
Still though, it's like he was clearly an identified victim and you were asking him to confirm.
Yeah.
So like, how did you not?
So those trials did not go as well. You would think that with how appalled we were, we would have given them swift justice, But no, we were very light on them. The British were very light on them. And
it was a one line repeated at those trials a lot. What was that line, Mike?
I was just following orders.
Yeah, and that got a lot of people out of the hot water they were definitely part of.
Before we move on, I just want to. I was looking up a little bit of side information here. The Redstone rocket, which you said carried someone to space. The Redstone rocket was designed as a ballistic missile that eventually NASA reconstructed to carry life instead of nuclear warheads.
Yeah,
well, that's good.
That makes sense.
Good.
So was it like a variant of the V2?
It was their first. It was 200-mile range, which for the time was a shit ton.
Oh yeah.
So that was like one of their very first like super long range.
Yeah.
And so they converted that into space. But yeah, the first Redstone rocket, which he was a part of, was a ballistic.
So with the U.S. putting Rudolph and von Braun together, that's how the atomic bomb was made.
Oh yeah.
Like, or intercontinental.
Yeah. Be careful because like they just released a movie about all that.
Yeah.
But as far as taking the atomic bomb and turning it into a missile, because they had definitely not done that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that, jackasses, because
So
that was never a fucking good idea.
As soon as we got these two people, it said that like we went up a decade in research immediately, and we, shot off the first atom bomb 2 years before they thought we would even have a prototype.
Yeah.
So, do you want to take it away with Kurt Bloma?
All right. Kurt Bloma. His role, he was a physician and biological warfare expert. That's a good one. That's a good side gig to physician.
Yeah, that's your minor in college.
I'm sure that one doesn't pay as well.
Or it pays unfathomable numbers.
No. That one.
I like how that's like his minor in college.
Yeah. Like it's like the side note to the physician. All right. His contribution involved in Nazi biological warfare research. His expertise was utilized by the U.S. chemical and biological weapons programs. That doesn't sound good. You couldn't just find a guy who like played pickleball or went bowling, could you?
We had a couple of those, but like first round draft pick, we want Bloma.
Yeah, we want Bloma. And this guy you said earlier when I mentioned a guy who got discovered and then was told to go back to Germany. This is him?
There's a couple, so I'm unsure.
Guys. Okay.
I think a couple of these dudes like flip-flopped a few times.
It's like, okay, you have to go. And then, oh, well, we actually need you for something. You can come back. All right. Bloma worked on methods of storage and dispersal of biological agents like plague, cholera, anthrax, and typhoid.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew all this stuff.
Yeah. And also infected prisoners with plague in order to test the efficiency of vaccines. Oh, yeah. I knew a little bit about that, too. It's really fucked up, but they actually did learn a little bit from stuff like that.
They kind of did.
It's not worth it, I would say, because you'll learn that stuff.
Bloma is interesting because, like, he was in direct contact with Himmler.
Okay.
They were buddies.
So he was like co-evil fuck.
Yeah. Or at least working for a co-evil fuck. Like, he actually, for a long time, was like, because Himmler wanted to, he wanted to load the V2 rockets with the Black Plague, tetanus, or typhoid. He wanted to spread mass influenza, and he wanted him to work on giving whole, like, swaths of area cancer.
Jesus Christ.
Bloma said the whole time, he was like, this is a bad idea.
Bullets on their way out, baby. This is the new thing. This is the new thing. This is how we're going to kill lots of people.
Like, Bloma was just a renowned person in his field. And he's like, you can do this. I know you can. Bloma the whole time was kind of like, I'm not like opposed, but, if we give the Black Plague to people on the ground, won't we get it too? He's like, I don't care. We'll deal with it. We'll go like really far away and
we'll just make sure it's far enough away. We won't let those people in.
It's like, no, that's not going to do it.
We won't let those people in.
So
they're not East Coast New Yorkers.
So like by proxy, Bloma ended up creating a lot of vaccines and worked on research to prevent some of this stuff. Then part 2 to that would be, weaponizing it. So he
was well on his way. This guy was going places.
He's attributed kind of a lot to vaccines and medicine in a icky way.
So in 1947, he was placed on trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity. They fully acquitted him. Because they couldn't prove anything.
Is he the one though? That was in Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned him. He is the one I mentioned earlier because they're like, They're like, all right, we gotta try this guy. It was bad. And then they sent him back, and he.
Do you want to look up if he's the one that was a Russian mole? One of these guys, I can't remember from the book, it ends up being a mole for the Russians.
Oh, like he was a Nazi.
We tried to give him a contract, and then he disappeared. And then like 3 years later, he's like, guys, I need help. I'll do that job you wanted.
Oh, okay. Well, come on in, buddy.
yeah. About time you showed up. Join the party.
I'm not seeing anything regarding him being a mole.
So it's not him.
But there were those guys.
Yeah, one of these dudes is
fucking Reds.
Yeah.
No, and that was. I do want to take a minute because we were talking about this the other day. Just like a real quick minute for a footnote of how much it sucked that's how this war ended. Instead of everybody on the winning side being united, it was like immediately they were gunning for each other.
Yes.
And I say they because even though the U.S., our country, was one of them, I wasn't around yet. I didn't make those calls. I ain't saying we. I would have been like, nah, man, we all need to unify. Anyways, that's all. Just at the end, there's so many obvious millions of historical reasons why that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it just pisses me off.
It is crazy that they're like, oh my God, these atrocities.
But those guys over there,
it's like we could apply those same atrocities to them.
Or at the very least, it was like, well, we can't let the Reds get their hands on this. And there was and the Reds were like, we need to get our hands on this.
Can't let the U.S. get their hands on this.
And fortunately,
can't let the U.S. get their hands on this.
Fortunately, they didn't utilize them in the same way. The U.S. didn't. But the fact that they utilized them at all.
I mean, that's a good point to go back to Bloma for a second.
Yeah.
I didn't know that we had a chemical weapons program in the U.S. I thought we were, since World War I, everybody's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. But they were doing that.
Oh, yeah.
This goes into...
Because those laws, there are laws against using them.
Yep.
I don't know if there are laws against making them.
I mean, maybe for a test batch, but at the quantity we were making them.
Well, and even if there are, think about it. Like, it's like the world order, right? The world government, but who's going to enforce that?
Yeah.
Governments are going to do what they can do.
There's no cameras then.
Yeah.
There's no satellite pictures.
Yeah.
You could just be making a nuke in Kentucky and not tell anybody about it.
Well, or like you said, like a next level chemical weapon that's not even it's a whole nother thing.
In a backwater barn lab.
I also wonder how many of those rules went out the fucking window when nukes were created, because it's like, no chemical weapons. Oh, but we have all these,
real quick,
WMDs.
The thing with the chemical warfare too, the U.S.'s justification for it was, the Russians are for sure going to do this. The Japanese are for sure going to do this. We need to figure out a way to prevent it.
Yeah.
So they maintained that line of thinking the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and fortunately,
but they still made them.
Fortunately, Japan, and of course Germany now, Japan took about 7 years, and then they were on their way to pretty much being an ally, because there was no East and West Japan. You know what I mean? Like it was all done one way there, and so the whole alliance over there, they were less worried about the Japanese than they were about the Soviets and East Germany.
That was actually the interesting part about the book too, involving the chemical aspect of the US. We were really worried about Japan in chemicals.
Was this during the war?
Yeah,
because that makes sense.
But and I mean kind of after too, when they invaded
it took a while.
When they invaded Germany, they looked at all the weapons programs and biologics that the Germans were doing, and they're like, this is sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where the Soviets were more interested in missiles. They were interested in guns. They were interested in their factory process.
Yeah.
But the Japanese had a particular affliction to the chemical programs, and they took with the program initially, only 2 out of 10 of these baddie scientists went to the U.S. So a lot of the other ones
Went to
Japan and the Russians.
Japan?
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah.
That's confusing me.
Japan took a bunch of these chemical warfare experts with back.
Huh. Because like Japan had no stable government afterwards. They were pretty much run by the U.S. for 7 years after the end of World War II.
We're talking during the Holocaust, like when they broke up, like when they took over Germany. Because the Cold War was like right after,
Yeah. Are you talking about? So Japan wasn't part of Germany after post World War II? Like
during World War II.
During World War II. Yes, but at the
end. When they invaded Germany.
Who invaded?
Japan.
Japan didn't invade Germany during World War II.
Or like.
That's why you're confusing me.
I don't know, man.
They were friends, so they would have like ambassadors.
They got some of the scientists. I mean, I didn't know about a battle or not, but like they got them somehow.
They kidnapped them, so they didn't come willingly.
I don't know.
I don't know.
They had them. I don't know. Like I assumed they got them. I don't know.
Okay, they were friends. That's the reason I'm confused. Japan and Germany were allies in World War II. And so
would they have like just sought asylum with an ally?
That's what I was wondering.
It wasn't asylum.
It was because like, yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Like I know that they took a lot of the chemical warfare like experts from Germany.
And they went from Germany to I know they went to England, they went to the US, they went to the Soviet Union. I had no idea any German scientists went to Japan.
Yeah. Well, it's a secret program.
Yeah.
Like,
and this
was
in the book you read.
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I'm asking. That was
our biggest motivation to bringing some of these guys like Bloma is because we knew that we had intel that the Japanese got a lot of these dudes and they were working on projects there.
Okay. I wonder how they were doing that. Like, because it was my understanding that there was pretty much no Japanese government. Like their emperor was still around, but like from 1945 to 1952, I believe, Japan was pretty much run by the United States, and so any official stuff going on was pretty much being done by the U.S. Unless there was some underground Japanese,
I mean, it's a plot of all secrets.
And that's why I'm saying, like, I'm
not familiar with the Japanese end of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, like that's why we had a weapons program, was to combat the Japanese's involvement in
World War II.
Continuing Nazi research.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. No, I don't know anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know who was there, where they came from, and
okay.
But yeah, that's just that's as much as you get in the book.
Yeah.
That's why
I'm curious about it, but maybe I'll look that one up and we'll address that because this might go on. This one might go on a couple episodes.
Yeah.
Should we move on then from anything else about Kurt Bloma?
I do want to say right before we end this, last year the U.S. finally got rid of chemical weapons that they had in storage.
Damn.
Really?
But that means that up until 2023, there were chemical weapons that we had ready to go.
Country, which is easy enough to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're claiming that they got rid of them.
Right. There's more.
They got rid of some back in like the 60s too, and they just dumped them in like the ocean.
Yeah, well, yeah. A lot of nuclear stuff got dumped in the ocean too.
It's crazy.
The ocean's fucked because of governments.
I mean, the Nazis were up to no good, but the U.S. wasn't perfect.
I mean, it's the natural, or I mean, if you want to point out a good thing about the U.S. Amidst all this is, the opportunity, especially with the Soviets being involved in Germany, to obliterate both the Japanese and German cultures was there. Historically speaking, that's what's normally done.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. But instead, they're like, we're just gonna take all your fancy pants, smart guys, and we're gonna go on doing our own agenda.
I mean, they took like businessmen and stuff too. Like it wasn't just, it wasn't all scientists too, which is surprising. Sometimes it was like.
That's why I was making that joke about Himmler earlier. How like the doctor comes, I said it already, but the doctor comes in and like, all right, Himmler, and then he's like finds him dead, and it's like, well, we were gonna offer you a job.
I don't know what he would have done here.
He probably would have actually been found guilty.
I think he was pretty stupid, actually.
Himmler?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, they were all stupid in a way. Hitler especially. But like, how was Himmler stupid? You got some like...
So he was really into the occult.
Oh, a lot of them were, dude.
But him, they wasted millions of German dollars sending expeditions to like Tibet to prove that the Buddha was German.
Yeah.
Like in dumb shit.
It was fucking hilarious when I first learned that.
Insanity. Like,
they were like, they were so into that shit.
He was a chicken farmer, and he just thought that like rural country life was the way it should be. And he grew up with white people around him, so he's like, it should be like the way it was, And, everybody should return to hunting and fishing and farming and dancing around a fire and stuff. Like his ideology was kind of stupid, He just wanted to bring it back to nature. So we use the most unnatural means to correct nature. We're just correcting biology.
I mean, and, anytime you watch any, of course, sensible video that discusses these things in history, they say, like, they point out, like, how bonkers all this shit is. And then they delve into it, and they go into the logic that the Nazis had. But the occult stuff is fucked.
I mean, we benefited from corporate structure watching the Nazi Party, because they were really good at delegating. It's like, you're in charge of operation such and such, and then they bring it down the line. It's like a multi-level marketing scheme,
Yeah.
Like a pyramid of authority.
If only...
Because like Himmler couldn't have done any of these things on his own. He was just like, I want a place to kill them better. And they're like, what the fuck does that mean? Just scientists are like, I don't know.
Could you imagine if
showers of gas?
I have had this conversation. This is a whole nother podcast episode, but one to note on. Imagine if the Nazi regime had decided, the Nazi party and the regime had like stood for good, instead of like just like that, like the scientists all working together to cure cancer, find vaccines, but like in a nice way. You know what I mean? Like that sort of the things that, and like, oh man, the power that would have had. The
crazy thing is that most of the world thought that that's what was going on for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because all of their weapons and medical experiments were funded from the state under the name of cancer research. So all of Bloma's research.
Yeah, all this fucked up shit we've been talking about.
Yeah, like weaponized cattle disease and like...
And again, using human beings, unwilling human beings as fucking... guinea pigs.
But all of that was considered cancer research. So like anytime they would, anybody would find out about their spending, they'd be like, wow, Germany spends a lot on cancer research.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're really doing good things over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I hope somebody doesn't clip this fucking episode up and just make us look awful. Out of context, a lot of this would look bad.
It's awful stuff, man.
It's hard to riff about Nazis.
I mean, they're all kind of stupid, like you said. I mean, I love that I learned that Hitler suffers from chronic flatulence.
Yeah.
Like, he just farts a lot.
Yeah.
Imagine him yelling at you and then just like,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, and then you can't laugh. You're dead. If you see someone get his brains blown out.
How many people died from laughing at his farts?
Yeah. Or like he turned on him and was like, made them enemies of the state because they laughed at his fart.
There was probably a special camp for fart laughers.
There probably was. It was probably like, he probably had a fucking bedpan that they would empty. I don't know.
A fart jar.
A fart jar, and it's like, now you will smell them all.
Now,
They
yeah,
probably had to suck the farts out of
they
his
huff the Fuhrer's farts.
Yeah, huffing the Fuhrer's farts. And then they would
Instead of
see,
it being embarrassing, they're like, "Oh, another gift
yeah, and then
from the Fuhrer."
fucking Bloma would be there testing the effects that it had on them.
Yeah, can I amplify Hitler's farts?
What do constant inhalation?
This
What does
must be-
constant inhalation of the Fuhrer's farts do to the human body?
And that's how they designed the gas chamber.
Hey, the
Oh,
gas
because every
chamber.
time you're with that motherfucker, it's a gas chamber.
Yeah.
That's
Good golly God.
that's I don't know. Like some of their thoughts were that stupid though.
They were.
Like anyway, continuing, Hubertus Stronghold. He was an aviation expert, and he is known as the father of space medicine. He contributed to the U.S. Air Force's understanding of the effects of high altitude flight and space travel on the human body.
Hey, this guy doesn't sound so bad, actually. You know, his job titles all line up, and his credentials look good.
This guy is not the worst. They're all fucking terrible, but like,
Oh, yeah, he worked it.
go ahead and read that.
How's that pronounced? Dachau? Okay,
The Dachau.
Dachau. Okay. Struckholz's work in aviation medicine during the war included involvement in experiments on prisoners at, one more time? What was it?
Dachau.
Dachau concentration camp, where subjects were subjected to extreme conditions to study the effects of high altitude and cold on the human body. I actually read about
that's
these
right.
ones.
Oh, it's this guy.
I have heard about these ones. Despite these connections, Struckholz's contributions were critical to the development of life support systems for NASA's space missions. Allegations of his wartime activities emerged later, but he remained a respected figure in U.S. aerospace medicine for many years, with his name associated with prestigious awards and institutions. So this was another example of a guy who they were just like, no, man, he didn't do it.
I mean, so this guy actually ran a bunch of these experiments on himself for a long time. He used to like fly up with a rabbit and like fly up in the air and push his body to the absolute limit. Most of his research at first was done on himself. But like there was
It would almost be commendable.
until
Until
higher up said you have to expand this research. We need to know how we can unfreeze people, or like what is the limits now that we're expanding our air force. You know, what is it called? The Luftwaffe.
That's the German Air Force.
Yeah.
Nice. You nailed it, by the way.
I listened to 19 hours of this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to expand the Air Force, they had work like this done. I don't know if this is the guy that directly studies the freezing temperatures. I think he's definitely on the list here.
I remember reading about that one, and they killed a lot of people doing that.
But with this, what they did is they built chambers that would emulate high altitude. At
Yeah.
first, he was taking a jet and like a plane up.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, well, can we just replicate the conditions of 70,000 feet in the air?
Is that the first time that kind of shit was done? Or was it?
Yeah. So, like, usually to conduct a scientific experiment, you'd have to test it on animals, and there'd be waiting periods, and you'd have to get your work approved. They were just like, try it. Bring in another one, we'll fiddle the knob a bit. So they were able to achieve a lot in the field because they used slaves. And they just had disposable people to keep running tests. So there had been some work done in other parts of the world. Actually, a U.S. guy who knew this guy, they met at a conference, liked him a lot, actually. And that's who recruits him to work for our Air Force.
Jesus, man. I just... Is there anything... Is there any scientific advancement that these fucking guys don't have their grimy fingerprints all over?
I will say that still yearly, there is the Hubris Stronghold Award, which is given for the greatest achievement in space medicine. So he still has that going for him. And weirdly, surprisingly enough, he died in 1986 in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah. So he never really paid.
Oh, yeah. As far as any of these guys,
paid. He got
Yeah.
paid. Like
Yeah.
they
rather than paying for their crimes, they got paid for their crimes.
all these guys had, like, they got really lucrative job offers.
Fucking awful, dude. Anyways, we have a high note for the midway before we do the last one of the
I think
episode?
we're gonna flip the order on 5.
Oh, okay. So move down to another.
Yeah, I want
Okay.
to talk about 6 to leave off.
Okay. Otto Ambrose. Oh, yeah. I've actually heard of this guy. Yeah. See, chemist and IG Farben executive. Sounds good. What's IG Farben? Do you know?
IG Farben was strictly a soap and detergent manufacturing company.
All right. Yeah.
That's all they made.
That's it. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's see what let's see what this candidate's got.
Oh, this guy's one of the worst guys on the list.
Contribution played a key role in the production of synthetic rubber and other chemicals for the Nazi war effort. His expertise was sought by U.S. chemical companies post-war. Okay, that's quite the resume. All right, Ambrose was involved in the management of the Buna plant at Auschwitz. Where slave labor was used under brutal conditions to produce synthetic rubber. Now, that one I actually knew. That's part of it was one of the biggest camps, and it was one of the worst smelling ones.
Yes.
As history discusses it. He was convicted of war crimes at the Nuremberg trials, but received a relatively light sentence and was released early. After his release, Ambrose worked as a consultant for companies like W.R. Grace and Dow Chemical, aiding in the development of chemical processes. Processes? How do you say that? I don't know. His recruitment highlighted the moral compromises made in Operation Paperclip, prioritizing scientific expertise over accountability for war crimes.
So this guy, they hunted him for a long time. They had to hunt this guy. He was so rich. He had a secret service kind of thing of his own.
Oh, wow. He had like a private mercenary company.
He had like 2 or 3 versions of the same identical vehicle and hired doubles. He had people hired that looked just like him to drive around and obfuscate Americans finding him.
Well, yeah, that's the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, but like this guy was an absolute Bond villain.
Yeah.
like-
He was a real life Bond villain.
They thought they got him one time. They're like, okay, we got his car, and it's a different guy.
It's like, this isn't the guy. Abort. This isn't the package.
Like, hey guys, it's like, he got away again.
Meanwhile, dude just made $2.5 million selling another what? Chemical. Oh no, he produced rubber.
No.
He only spent 6 years in prison.
6 years.
That's not.
So IG Farben is a big
You can
player in this. IG Farben, what did they do? They made soap and detergent on paper.
Yeah.
What else did they do? They made Zyklon B. They also made Tarbin gas, sarin gas. They made who was going to be the one to make the weaponized bubonic plague? It was going to be Farben.
Okay. So they sound like a great company.
This guy absolutely sold out. So he was
getting shit
often
done.
a mediator between slave labor and stuff too. He's one of the first. IG Farben was one of the first contracts with the government for like, okay, we need more people, bring them in, and they paid 3 Reichsmarks per day per person. Yeah. I don't know what the conversion would be, but it doesn't matter. Like
Right.
they paid $3 a day to have these people And
Yeah, it was more back then, trust me.
but no, off of the profits they were making and you know, kind of kicking ass at war. Like they were producing chemical warfare for, 300 or $3,000 a day.
Yeah.
And doing millions in destruction.
Yeah, they got paid. Instead of paying for their crimes, they got paid for them.
So instead of him serving out his 25 years, the U.S., even though he was held in a German facility, the U.S. Granted him clemency, which is a forced pardon upon someone. So the U.S. forced a pardon upon him to get him released after 6 years, and he immediately came and was a head advisor for the U.S. Army Chemical Corps.
Jesus.
So this is a dude who was doing his time and was bailed out.
Yeah.
To do.
I wonder what I think his initial sentencing was 20 years or something. But his time in prison too, they had him under kind of house arrest for a bit after they did catch him, but he still lived in a mansion. He still had servants and
house arrest in a mansion. You ever see that fucking Charlie Sheen commercial where he's driving the car for a mile or something, and then there's this giant party going on and there's all kinds of shit going on. He's like, I love house arrest. It was like that.
Gotcha.
It was like Charlie Sheen house arrest.
This man though, this man has absolutely no good. Some of these people are they really wanted to just pursue their, Von Braun, he wanted to make space rockets. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
He ended up doing terrible shit. I'm not saying that he's not a bad guy. But
no excuses for him.
He became a bad guy. This guy Otto Ambrose has been a bad guy the whole time.
He was born a bad baby.
Yeah. They were just such involved in the direct slave labor aspect. They were making all the stuff to keep the murder machine going. They had one of the biggest private company contracts with the state.
And that, as I was saying earlier, is one of the things that always scared me the most about the Nazis was how they incorporated and modernized slavery and murder and mass extermination and genocide.
It was one of the plans in the final solution for Hitler was to, decompartmentalize all this stuff. So as long as he could get private companies to get involved, there'd be more blame to spread, and it'd be harder to say it was any one person. There were so many people involved that it made it the water's really muddy, which is why a lot of these guys got off light.
Yeah.
Because just get everybody involved in the atrocities and it's hard to catch us all.
That's true.
The only thing he was convicted of is the use of slave labor, by the way.
Otto Ambrose?
Hitler liked Otto Ambrose so much that he rewarded him 1 million Reichsmarks. And when he did his time in jail, he was the government gave him a contract. Do you want to work for us? And he was I've got $1 million in dirty money and I can't do anything with it. You guys want to figure that out for me?
Oh my God. So they got him his money too.
There was not a transfer. There was no transfer, no way to directly turn this money into that money.
So they just gave him $1 million.
Well, they figured it out for him. They contacted Swiss banks to transfer the money and convert it into USD so he could bring it to America.
Of course.
Yeah, we loved having this guy on board. We really wanted him right off the jump.
Stop saying we, say they. We didn't have nothing to do with it. It's times like this that I'm very careful what words I use when describing what people did.
Well, I'm saying the U.S.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, man, I didn't do any of this.
The ominous they.
You were a part of the they.
Exactly. So that's why it's like, sorry, I didn't I didn't do nothing.
Yeah. How likely would... All right, you're a man, 31, in Nazi Germany.
31?
How do you feel about all this?
I'm freaking the fuck
It's
out.
41. We'll say it's 41. The year.
Oh, okay. How old am I?
31.
Okay.
The age you are.
The age I am now. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm too not okay with it. You know, I would say if I was a kid and I was inducted into the Hitler Youth, who knows, right? That's like how half of this shit went down the way it did. They had this because the Nazi stuff started in the 20s. By the time the war was going on, they'd had a whole generation of people that were like, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people knew stuff was happening, but like
The brainwashing cult shit had already been going on for a long time, though.
Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's head of propaganda, was actually kind of smart by being the first person to control the media. So he controlled all the TV shows, what movies came out, and that
Goebbels.
Yeah.
Mean, not even mean. I mean, probably mean. They were all fucking mean, but like he was the brilliant propagandist, Nazi propagandist.
And that's something that is used today.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you tell them what to see, then that's all they see, you know?
Yeah, it's different now. It was easier back then.
Well, in like North Korea, that's their whole game, you know?
Yeah, I don't know how that's actually worked for so long, honestly. We could do a whole podcast on how does he keep his country in the dark?
I would like to research North Korea, but I feel like you can't properly. We have such limited info.
Yeah, you really can't.
Like, you're not allowed to talk there. So
Yeah.
we haven't talked to many people. Like,
yeah. Just go inside and they're like, cameras, nope.
They can't go on Reddit and
no. They'll say they're not connected to the internet. If you look at the world like at nighttime, you know, like the satellite images, North Korea is dark. Like, you know, everywhere else is lit up at nighttime.
I always found that the restricted hairstyles is kind of humorous.
Yeah, they all have to have Kim Jong.
Well, there's like 4 different hairstyles for guys and like 3 for girls, but like you have to have those. There's hair regulations.
If you're a barber, it's probably a pretty easy gig.
Yeah,
it's like you want 1 or 4, or 1 through 4.
Yeah. Or you want 1, 2, 3, or 4? Those are your options.
Standardized male cut 3. Good option.
That one is one of my favorites.
I've done 5,000 this week.
Definitely in the top 4 for guys.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? Everyone picks that one. It's, you know, Kim Jong-un's got that one. Another one. I can't believe it.
Is Kim Jong-un the most Hitler-like version?
You like the most modern version of Hitler?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You know?
Yeah, because we don't know what he's doing. He could be doing this stuff. He is doing some of this stuff.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's any... He probably would be, because otherwise I don't think there's anything quite Hitler. There's nobody quite Hitler out there.
I mean, I'm sure there's small countries. Like
there might be some Hitler-esque people in smaller countries for sure, but
nobody to the scale of that monster.
Right. Well, and I mean, you know, modern day, no. Say, you know, we talk all this talk about Hitler, but then there's Stalin. Stalin had like 20 million kills over about the same period of time that Hitler had like 6.
11.
Hitler had, well, it was okay. It was like 6 to 11.
6 million Jews.
Yeah. And then, but you know, with Stalin, it was like 20 to 25 million. You know, if we're talking about kill count here.
Stalin got real gross too.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know much about him. I need to do some more Stalin research.
I think it's because he was good looking that he gets, and he wound up being on the of course, the right side, but like, it's that look, you know, he looks less creepy than all the Nazis.
That's the ultimate. Like,
if you look at pictures of young Stalin, he could be a fucking male supermodel today. And here's the thing. It's like, even when he was an old man, it's like he was like this dude just like coming by. He was like just hanging out, and it's like, hey, it's Stalin. It's like, hey, I just killed 1 million Ukrainians. Hey, you know what I mean? Like, The dude was a fucking monster.
I mean, I think that's a valuable lesson throughout history is that handsome dudes got to murder. Like,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer. It's charisma.
It's charisma.
Dude.
Do you know how
Zanny Malik looks just like young Joseph Stalin? He does. What
That's
the
funny.
fuck?
Did he play him in anything?
No, he's like an internet personality, but he needs to.
Yeah. I would say I don't even know who that is, but
Yeah, what made Stalin snap? Just power? They just want...
there is a story there. We don't have the time for that. Do you want to know how he died? Do you guys know how he died? So he had this rule. He made this rule for the guards outside his room to never come in for anything, no matter what. And then that night, like a couple nights later, he makes a bunch of like help, like he's choking, like something's wrong. And they come in and he has those guys put to death for it because it was all a test.
That's
right?
not funny. Oh God.
Yeah. It's awful. It's awful. But then I don't know how long it was later that he actually was having a real serious I think he was having a stroke, some kind of serious medical problem. Cerebral hemorrhage. And they heard it. They could hear it, but they were like, I ain't going in. You going in? Like,
let's dwell on that for a second.
Yeah,
it's like,
he said not to come in.
I imagine
I'm following his orders.
He's like, I'm choking on chicken bones. I'm like, help. And they're like, oh, sire, are you okay? And he's like, what the fuck did I tell you?
yeah. I ain't falling for that one.
Yeah.
That's how you got my daddy. My cousin Steve.
Weak and insubordinate.
Or no, it'd be
we came to save you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
cousin Sergey.
So, yeah, that's how you got my cousin Sergey.
Tyrants. What an interesting amount of power for such average, uninteresting men.
His 2 guards were executed afterwards for not saving.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
So they died no matter what, dude. Fuck. You can't win. You can't win with these assholes.
I bet after the first couple of rounds, they're like, I don't want guard duty. Please.
Right?
I'm going to make sure that Stalin likes me quite a bit, but not enough to ask me
to be on his royal guard or whatever.
Yeah.
His king's guard.
You get to protect me. This is the greatest honor. Fuck.
Fuck. Yeah, well, and a lot of times, even if you were his buddy, like, Stalin was photoshopping people out of. It's like you and Stalin, your buddies, you're hanging out. You guys take a picture together, but then next thing you know, before you're even gone, he's just like hugging a tree.
Yeah. Just so happened he got missing.
Yeah. And it's just like a sign to you, like, pack your bags. You disappear or we'll disappear you.
Yeah. That guy was part of that tree. He's under it now.
Yeah, right.
In the dirt somewhere.
Like, I thought, wasn't there somebody in this photo with you? It's like, oh yeah, he's there.
Kinda. Well, okay, Dodo. Did you like that? Was that interesting at all? Hopefully we cleaned it up in the edit and
oh yeah, no,
we got you some.
It's gonna be a great episode.
Hopefully you learned something. I can't recommend enough Annie Jacobson's book, Operation Paperclip. You can also look at the CIA documents about it, about stuff that was released.
And I hope some of our lighthearted riffing helped a little bit in this episode that is actually about a lot of horrible, awful shit, and it was probably the worst genocide in the history of mankind.
It's terrible. And
so that's why we made some jokes about it while we were...
Yeah, lighten the mood a bit. But if you guys like this episode, go ahead and like and subscribe. Share it with a friend. We plan to do a part 2. Not sure when, but there will be a part 2, and we'll finish this list. And if you like more history content like this, or like this, just let us know in the comments.
Thanks a lot, guys. Definitely leave a comment.
Toodaloo.
Ta-ta.